Hello, welcome to this segment. Today we have Chris Paul. He's the Associate Director of the PMO here at the University of Washington. Welcome, Chris, for being here today. We're going to talk a little bit in this segment about coaching and mentoring. A lot of the work that we do as PMs entails certain skills, competencies, and a lot of those skills and competencies get developed over time. And what's really important is for any PM or Scrum Master, product owner, any practitioner to want to develop their skills can a lot of times look to coaching from a manager or some sort of mentoring relationship as well to help them in their kind of self-development plans and putting those together. So those are some of the topics that we're going to talk about today and some of the questions I want to have for you. I'll just start with some of the basic ones. Why is it important for managers to coach their employees?
I think there's kind of three different perspectives on that. Obviously, for the person being coached, it's important for them as a way for them to be able to develop their skills, to be able to grow their career, give them some sort of future direction for where they may want to go with their career, and to give them the skills and the capabilities for doing that. From the manager's perspective, there's potentially the opportunity for that person to become a successor for that manager. And so kind of succession planning, in addition to the individual's interests, are useful. And then kind of the third perspective that I take on it is the business's perspective. The business as a whole benefits from having, obviously from having its employees be skilled at their jobs and to be able to improve those skills, kind of a continuous process improvement kind of perspective on the way they do their work.
That's really good. I think that coaching is a really key aspect, and it's something that if employees in a spot to take advantage of that, they really position themselves to kind of grow and learn long term. How do you see the difference between coaching versus mentoring? Because both are very important. One's maybe a little more formal than the other, but both can be really beneficial.
My experience of those has been interestingly different. And so coaching, I felt, was kind of manager directed, right? It's kind of the manager looking at the needs of the organization, comparing those with the needs of the person and the skills of the person, and sort of guiding that person towards being able to better meet the needs of the organization, either by positive reinforcement or remedial work, depending on what it is. But it's kind of always in the context of doing the work and sort of doing the work of a project. In the cases where I've been involved with mentoring relationships, it's kind of very different in that in the cases that I've been in, the mentor was actually not part of the same organization necessarily, maybe slightly distant in the organization, therefore not involved in the evaluation of the employee's performance. And it gives the employee the opportunity to kind of be more open about situations and to seek more broad kinds of guidance. And in that situation then, it's really more kind of employee guided, the discussion. It's really about, where do I want to be when I grow up, and so how do I get there, as opposed to, how am I doing at my job, and how do I do that job better.
So talk about some of the main ways that you coach your employees.
So coaching, I think, is kind of a natural part of a regular rhythm of one-on-one discussions that we have with our employees. Some of that one-on-one conversation can be about kind of the mechanics of the current assignment and the project and that sort of thing. But then it's also beneficial, I think, to use that time to do some coaching about maybe specific situations that have arisen in that project, and using those as kind of opportunities for Socratic method of sort of asking questions. How did that go for you? Or gee, that didn't seem like it turned out very well. How do we want to make that better for the next time? And in a sense, I find that kind of a micro version of a retrospective at the end of a sprint in a Scrum setting. It's really an opportunity to say what went well, what didn't go well, and then have an action plan around how you're going to deal with the things that didn't go well and kind of move those forward. So that's kind of the majority of how I handle coaching with my employees. In my current setting, I've seen sort of larger, more formal kinds of coaching done at other employers. So the way we do it now is maybe kind of the smallest scale, kind of least formalized version of it. A very formalized version of it could have a very strong list of competencies and very formalized evaluation process between the manager and the employee about which competencies are necessary for the job and the current stage of the job, and how well the employee currently matches those, what are the kind of the most important gaps in those, and then developing formal plans around how to address those. And the formal plans could include on-the-job training or specific project experience that's targeted towards growing a particular competency. It could include formal education classes, reading, doing research, any number of other things like that, as well as this sort of continued one-on-one conversation about those learnings and sort of drawing them back into the context of the work.
Mm. And how do you go about, for example, how you have an employee, take a PM for example, and they've done a lot of waterfall project management, and they want to go through a career transition and come into more of an agile method, but they've never done it before. And they either want to look at becoming maybe a scrum master or a product owner. What would you say, or maybe even going from a PM, let's go with from the waterfall PM to more of an agile role. What sort of activities would you envision that practitioner could take to start, making that career transition into a different type of project management role, for lack of a better term?
So I think that's one, because the Scrum methodology is fairly well documented, and there's a lot of available formal training for that. I think a really good starting place for that, just to get the person familiar with the terminology and kind of with the mindset, would be to just do some of that kind of formal training. And it would depend then on kind of the learning style of the particular person. You want to try and match the learning opportunity with their personal learning style. So if they like a classroom setting where they can exercise the new skills with a group of people, then you want to provide that kind of training opportunity for them. If they just like to read it and figure it out for themselves, then you would obviously get them lined up with the right book. Once they've done that kind of formalized training, then I think you want to set up kind of a smallish project for them to start practicing on. And what I found is then sitting in kind of is the silent partner or silent observer on that. And it will depend on how open that person is to feedback, how you want to approach it. For some people, they feel fairly strong and confident in themselves. You can provide feedback even in the context of doing, say a sprint planning session like that. You can say, okay, that's not working. Let's try this instead. If they're perhaps a little less confident, then you wait until afterwards and into your regular one-on-one session, and you say, oh, you remember that time in the sprint planning session where this thing happened, and well, how did that work? And let's talk about doing it better. And so then, as you sort of provide that feedback, as you see them kind of get successful at applying the approach, then you can sort of back away and sort of start letting them run it on their own. And scaling up the size of the work or the importance or complexity of the work that they're doing.
And do you think that do you see any correlation between coaching employees and helping their performance, giving them stretch assignments and general morale or health of the team?
Absolutely. I find, for myself, for anybody that I've had on my teams, giving them those confidence builders, those opportunities to go out and learn new things. I think program managers or project managers generally are problem solvers. It's just kind of innate in our nature. And so giving them a problem to solve that they haven't solved before is always kind of deeply motivating. And you see it they'll go work harder at it. I've got a PM on my team right now that, to a certain degree, over time had convinced themselves that the kind of small and medium-sized projects was kind of the right scale. And that person is now on an extremely strategic project, is very challenged to do the work, and is thriving.
Yeah.
And just loving it, and accomplishing things that you know, neither one of us thought was possible before. So I think it's a great way of motivating somebody and then keeping them engaged and wanting to stay.
Yeah, that's got to make you feel really good as a manager.